Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a series of absolutely shocking financial confessions to figure out exactly how people end up living so dangerously far above their means. We're going to break down the numbers, the mindsets, and the brutal realities of the modern debt trap. Okay, let's jump right into the madness with a story that perfectly sets the stage here. We have a young woman who got her very first credit card and immediately maxed it out, spending the whole thing, treating her friends to dinners and outings. She was so confused by the concept of a credit limit that she literally called her mom, genuinely believing that hitting her $4,000 debt limit was a personal achievement. Seriously, she basically thought she was leveling up in a video game, totally oblivious to the fact that a credit card isn't free money, it's a loan. And this brings us to a really vital question. In a world where we have so much access to financial information right at our fingertips, how do so many smart, capable people end up in these crushing financial train wrecks? How do you go from pure innocence to being buried under a mountain of high-interest debt? Well, let's move to stage one, innocent ignorance and the illusion of credit. Because the truth is, nobody wakes up and just decides to ruin their financial future on purpose. It always starts with a basic misunderstanding of how the system actually works. Have you ever felt like you're working so hard, but have absolutely nothing to show for it? One individual in our sources hit the nail on the head regarding the illusion of credit. She works incredibly hard, keeps herself to a super strict $250 grocery budget, but she still feels totally broke. Why? Because as she put it, past her already spent the paycheck that current her is desperately trying to earn. When you swipe a card, past you gets that quick dopamine hit, but future you? Future you is the one treating hours of your life to pay the bill, plus interest. And every dollar of interest you pay is a dollar your future self earned but never got to actually touch. And staying on the topic of financial ignorance, this number brilliantly illustrates what happens when a sudden lump sum meets a total lack of financial education. We found an 18-year-old who received a $30,000 car accident settlement. Now, that could have been a life-changing head start, right? Instead, she blew almost all of it her freshman year, buying Michael Kors purses and shoes for 10 of her friends. And the absolute kicker here, whatever little money she did manage to save, she put into a standard 0.1% savings account, completely losing out on any real growth. Which brings us to stage two, the status trap, specifically dealing with cars and lifestyle. This is where the desperate attempt to look rich begins to override basic arithmetic. Now, what's really fascinating here is the brutal math behind being car poor. We have an 18-year-old who financed a $46,000 Jeep. She is paying a base note of $978 plus another $154 just for the warranty. That is well over $1,100 a month. It eats up half her paycheck, effectively forcing her to drive DoorDash on the side just to afford the payment on the car she's using to do the deliveries. As she rationalized it, just because you're broke doesn't mean you can feel broke. And of course, buying a brand new car comes with its own hidden tax. Another woman we looked at bought a brand new car and immediately regretted the massive interest payments. But in doing so, she honestly gave us the absolute best definition of vehicle depreciation we have ever heard. She realized it lost value the second she drove it off the lot, saying, "It was only brand new for 5 minutes." So incredibly true. So, the crucial point here is that money is math, not energy. There is this really dangerous social media myth convincing young people that budgeting is a mindset problem rather than a numbers problem. This whole manifestation-style advice convinced a 28-year-old living at home to blow her absolute last $400 on a one-way ticket to Europe, all under the delusion that the more you put out, the more comes back. Listen, when you treat money as an energy flow rather than a hard equation, the math will always, always catch up to you. We also see the classic trap of lifestyle creep. It's perfectly described by a woman who got a salary bump and immediately moved into a luxury apartment because she felt that's where people who make her salary are supposed to live. She realized way too late that while she could technically afford the rent on paper, she couldn't afford it in her soul. Every spare dollar was going to rent, leaving her totally unable to travel, save, or handle even a basic emergency. Once those status traps are set and the monthly baseline goes up, we enter stage three, the brutal math of snowballing. This is where compounding interest really takes over. The scale of this problem is staggering. According to the New York Fed, Americans hold a record $1.28 trillion in credit card debt. Trillion! Even worse, roughly 60% of cardholders carry a balance month to month at an average interest rate of around 20%. This shows just how systemic this snowball effect truly is. It starts with a little avoidance, the interest compounds, the minimum payments eat all your available cash, and suddenly you're putting your groceries on the card, which just grows the balance even more. This aggressively stacks up into systemic failure. Just look at this couple who actually filed for bankruptcy 6 years ago. The slate was wiped completely clean. But today, they've fallen right back into over $92,000 of debt. 2 financed cars, over $32,000 in credit cards, furniture financed through a firm, phones through Verizon, and a whole stack of personal loans. This brutally illustrates a hard truth. Bankruptcy wipes the debt, but it doesn't wipe the toxic behavioral habits. If the behavior doesn't change, you're literally just resetting the timer. And we see exactly how that unchanged behavior traps people in the debt consolidation cycle. A consolidation loan is a great tool, but it only works if you freeze your cards. One woman ended up over $126,000 in the hole because she fell right into this exact trap. She took out a $23,000 debt consolidation loan to pay off her credit cards, but failed to close the empty cards. Predictably, she immediately ran them right back up to their limits, effectively doubling the debt she started with. Which brings us to the climax of the explainer, Stage 4, financial delusion and systemic failure. This is where bad math completely transforms into a total suspension of reality. When you look at the breakdown of debt here, it completely destroys the cultural myth that student loans are the only reason young people are broke today. We found a 22-year-old who built a $100,000 mountain of debt entirely on their own. The student loan, the thing we're always told is the big, scary debt, is actually the smallest piece here, at just under $8,000. This entire crisis is anchored by $37,000 in credit cards and a massive $55,000 car loan. The sheer desperation of this delusion is echoed by a well-paid nurse who went completely broke buying designer clothes. Her goal? To project an influencer lifestyle online. She went into heavy debt to build a personal brand that made absolutely $0. She is literally still paying 25% interest on a purse she bought 4 years ago. But out of her struggles, she leaves us with perhaps the most practical advice of the day. Stop klarning, stop affirming. And the delusion just gets deeper, folks. Another young man admitted he taps his card like he's already a millionaire, fundamentally guaranteeing he will never actually be rich. Why? Because every single dollar he borrows today is his future income already spent. He adapted his spending to the life he envisions having in 10 years, essentially forcing his future rich self to start every single month in the red, just paying off his past broke self. But the absolute peak of this behavior goes to a guy who built what we can only describe as a debt lasagna. Let's walk through this masterpiece of bad decisions, shall we? First, he traded in an old car and rolled the negative equity, money he still owed, into a brand new car loan. Second, he financed the new vehicle. And third, to fund the required $5,000 down payment, he put it on a credit card, charging a 25% APR. That is 3 layers of compounding interest stacked perfectly on top of each other. This systemic denial ultimately culminates with a woman who has had 3 cars repossessed. She confidently gives the absolute worst advice of the year, claiming the financial system is a matrix setup and suggesting you just drive a car until they take it, ride the bus for a bit, and then do it again. What she fundamentally misses is how subprime lending actually works. They specifically target desperate buyers with wrecked credit, which is exactly why she gets hit with predatory 25% interest rates. It's not a matrix life hack. It's a voluntary cycle of poverty. So, as we wrap up this explainer, you really have to ask yourself, are you falling into the trap of spending your future income just for today's status? Or are you finally ready to strip away the delusions and look at your money for what it really is, just math? Because one way or another, the math is going to catch up with you.